Welcome to part 2 of this 3-part look at the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, Florida. For Sparks 1524, I'm Nathaniel Miller coming to you in a live recorded event from coastal, casual, and comfortably cosmopolitan Niceville, Florida. Naval aviation first came to Pensacola in 1914 and has remained ever since. The Naval Aviation Museum first opened its doors in 1963. Today, the facility has over 300,000 feet of floor space and occupies a 37-acre campus. It's one of the largest aviation museums in the world and has just too many exhibits and aircraft to discuss in one short video, so I want to highlight just a few of my favorites to give you an idea of the scope of what this facility has to offer. Charles Lindbergh is rightly lauded for his famously successful solo and non-stop flight across the Atlantic in 1927. However, the first flight across the Atlantic had been completed by naval aviators 8 years earlier in 1919 in the giant NC4 Flying Boat. The NC flying boats were anti-submarine aircraft that arrived too late for World War I. Instead, NC-1, 3, and 4 were designated to be a 3-plane flotilla flying the Atlantic in stages. NC-1 and 3 were both damaged during the attempt and failed to complete the crossing, but the NC-4 made it. Today, the enormous NC-4 towers over the aircraft around it, a giant even by today's standards and the first aerial link between the old and new worlds. An interesting historical note involving the NC-4 kinda shows just how fast human flight developed during the 20th century. The NC-4 made the first successful crossing of the Atlantic Ocean in 1919. The Apollo 11 spacecraft made the first successful moon landing only 50 years later in 1969. That's a pretty remarkable set of achievements for only half a century. The World War II exhibit is dominated by a full-scale replica of the light carrier USS Cabot's Island and flight deck. Sitting on that flight deck is the only known surviving aircraft that fought at the Battle of Midway. This unique aircraft is a Douglas SBD-2 Dauntless dive bomber. This Dauntless is not only a veteran of Midway, but she was on Ford Island's tarmac when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Following its survival at Pearl Harbor, the Dauntless flew in raids against the Japanese at New Guinea off the carrier USS Lexington before being assigned to a Marine Corps unit on Midway Island. The aircraft participated in the battle on June 4, 1942. The Dauntless ended her military career, like so many other planes in the museum, at the bottom of Lake Michigan. The beat-up aircraft was transferred to training duty over Lake Michigan in 1943 and was ditched in a mishap, sinking out of sight and memory for over 50 years. One exhibit upstairs in the museum's main exhibition hall takes you through historic Palafox Street in Pensacola, to a Ford Pacific Marine Corps Air Base, to an aircraft carrier hangar deck. These are only a few examples of what the museum has to offer. You could write an entire book on this place and you'd still fail to catalog all of the heritage protected under the museum's sun-soaked roof. I hope you've enjoyed this brief tour of just a few of the museum's points of interest. These are some of my favorites, and I thought they would give a good idea of what this place has to offer. Part 3 will take a look at one specific aircraft, an F-14 Tomcat. This particular F-14 Tomcat happens to be one that I actually worked on and launched off the flight deck of USS Carl Vinson many years ago. If you wish to visit the Naval Aviation Museum, I have included their website in the description below. Also, if you care to read more about my own adventures, Part 2 of my column on the museum is also linked in the description below. If you like this video, please hit that little like button. Feel free to share it if you think it's interesting and worthwhile. I'd also ask that you consider subscribing and keep up with my ongoing content. Thank you for your time. It is greatly appreciated, and until we meet again, remember to go and do some great things.